And that's commercial break.
Nice. Ooh, hear that? My neck cracked. So satisfying.
Speaking of satisfying, I just used a Clorox toilet wand.
Ooh, with the cleaner already in it.
Yes. All in one. The brush just clicks on.
Click.
Then you swish, swish, swish.
Ah.
And pops right off into the trash.
Just click.
Swish.
Pop.
Clorox. Clean feels good.
Clean feels good.
Oh, we're back.
Use as directed.
Building a business may feel like a big jump, but OnDeck Small Business Loans can help keep you afloat. With lines of credit up to $100,000 and term loans up to $250,000, OnDeck lets you choose the loan that's right for your business. As a top-rated online small business lender, OnDeck's team of loan advisors can help you find the right business loan to fit your needs. Visit OnDeck.com for more information. Depending on certain loan attributes, your business loan may be issued by OnDeck or Celtic Bank. OnDeck does not lend in North Dakota. All loans and amounts subject to lender approval.
She spent a very long period of time separated from her children. No contact. A lot of people call that parental alienation. She's here to tell her story and what she's doing about it on the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show. Welcome to the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show. In the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show, we are joined by special guests talking about their experiences, the realities of investigating crimes, plus those who have experienced horrendous trauma. Police, first responders, military, and victims of crime share their stories. Hi, I'm John J. Wiley. In addition to being a broadcaster, I'm also a retired police sergeant. Be sure to check out our website, letradio.com, and also like us on Facebook. Search for the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show. There's a couple ways you can stay in touch and keep informed of what's going on with the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show. Number one, go to our website, letradio.com. Sign up for our email newsletter. It's real easy to find. I promise we don't spam you. I send out about one email every 2 weeks or so. And there's also a feature called broadcast channels on our Facebook page where we send messages directly to your inbox, directly to your messenger. Real easy to sign up for. Make sure you like or follow the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show Facebook page. And up top, you'll see broadcast channels, one for free podcast versions of the radio show, another one top post of the day. So you too can stay informed quickly, easily, and best of all, like always, free. Joining us from the great state of Missouri, we have Haley Straw on the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show. Haley, well, I'll let her tell her story in a moment. She's gone through parental alienation. That's a term that a lot of people use, but it's really her story that matters, which means she's been not been able to contact or see her children. She's written a series of books called Tales of an Amish Taxi Driver. And Haley's here to tell her story in the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show. Haley, thanks so much for being a guest. Very much appreciated.
Yeah, I'm glad to be here.
And by the way, I grew up in Amish country in southern Maryland, spent many of my years in St. Mary's and Charles County, Maryland, and we're very familiar with the Amish people. Great way of life, that just like every other segment of the population, you got some really good people and some not so good people. And I'm sure you got plenty of those stories. And for those who don't know, I'm also divorced. I'm a parent of two daughters now in their 30s. They live in Buffalo, New York and South Buffalo. Great people. We have a great relationship, but it wasn't always like that. It was very difficult. So Haley, number one, how many kids are we talking about and what are their ages?
I have 6 children. My oldest is 24, my youngest is 12, and I have relationships with some of them, not all of them.
Okay, gotcha. So we're going to use the term parental alienation loosely, and however it fits, people can fit it, but what's unique is your story. And listen, I tell a friend of mine, I'm retired police, and one of the things that people need to understand, this is from my own experience, also experience in Florida, Maryland, and as a police officer. Divorces and child custody are civil arrangements. You can have court orders, and unless you take that person to court and spend that money, you're not going to get anywhere. And even if the court says they got to do this, chances are you're not going to get very far. So remember this. Child custody and divorces are civil matters, and there's not a whole lot the law, myself included, police can do about it. Has that been your experience?
Yes, I appreciate that perspective. Yeah.
How long were you married, or how long were you with this person that is a parent or co-parent of the children?
We were married for 22 years.
That's a long time. Look, I'm not here to cast aspersions. 22 years being married is no small accomplishment. Having 6 children, I'm a product of 5, is no small accomplishment. My wife comes from a family of 9 children. It's a different deal. When you start getting into, I think, above 5, it really changes. One of the things that happens with, I don't like the term parental alienation when it comes to this, is certain times the children are not allowed to be in contact with the parent because the parent's behavior is detrimental. Is that the case for you?
Is my behavior detrimental, you mean?
To you or your loved ones?
My behavior has not been detrimental, no.
Okay, and I'm asking that, and I don't mean that in a negative way. A lot of people throw that around and say, for example, if you have a parent who has a chronic alcohol and drug problem and they're blacking out and they're cursing and they're doing all kinds of violent stuff, you don't want your kids to be exposed to that. So, yeah, we get that, but that's not the case for you.
Correct.
Okay. How long have you and your ex been separated and divorced?
November 2018, the divorce was final.
And when's the last time you had a serious relationship with any of your children?
I have serious relationships with my youngest daughter is the closest to me. She was 5 when all of this went down. My oldest daughter, the last contact I had with her at the bequest of another woman who intruded upon my family when our family was falling apart. She actually wanted to marry my husband from the time we moved to Missouri. She was our neighbor 1 house away, divorced mother of 7, and she wanted to marry my husband, and I was married to him. Now, we are Mormon, okay, but we do not practice polygamy.
Don't even get me started on that, sister, because I'll be honest with you. I watch these TV shows. My wife actually does. Sister Wives, all that stuff, and I'm thinking, man, I got one wife, and she's mad at me for long periods of time, and I don't know why. And could you imagine having 7 or 8 wives and them all being mad at you and not having any idea why?
Yeah, there are definitely problems with polygamy, but yeah, I won't go into that either because I have my own opinions that don't agree with the church.
Well,
anyway, she wanted my husband, and once we were separated and one of us had to leave. I just want to make that clear. When you have a divorce, somebody has to leave. Okay, and I was driving the Amish because my husband was struggling to provide for us, and we had this big family, and either he didn't have a job or he was working really close and he could provide more stability. So I felt like it was best if he keeps the 6 kids in his home while I figure out where I'm going to go and keep traveling with the Amish to provide for myself.
That seems pretty level-headed. Doesn't seem irrational. Nothing about that seems crazy.
Okay. Well, it was used against me. This woman took over, and they locked me out of the house when I was going over there and tending to the children if I wasn't driving Amish. I was cleaning, cooking, doing all those mothering things, right? And she had taken over. He had let her, and she was unkind to my children, and she convinced my ex-husband to put a lock on the door. And one time I went over, and my oldest daughter, that's where we're going with this, she was told to physically assault me when I wanted to get in the home and do the things that I had been doing, right, as we were separated and reorganizing our family life. So my daughter physically assaulted me, my oldest, and that was the last time I have seen or had any contact with my oldest daughter. She's 24 now, married, living in Kansas. I was not supposed to even find any of that out.
Here's the thing. When and domestic violence of any type, whether it be children, whether against parents against each other, doesn't matter. It's horrible. And we used to get calls nonstop for family disputes, and the whole family be involved in arguing, and he said, and who struck John, and who did, and there was never any winners in that. When you say that you were physically assaulted, Haley, how bad were the injuries?
No, it wasn't bad. It wasn't bad. Keep in mind, I'm a Mormon, and we have very conservative ideas, and she just physically attacked me, just shoved me out of the house, and at the bequest of this woman who was trying to take over, and that was it. It wasn't bad, and she was 17, and I don't blame her. Things were falling apart. She was responding.
Look, I get that part. I'm going to ask you a pointed question. The father of the children, you'd think that they would get involved and say, no, don't do that. That's not appropriate behavior.
You would think. I don't want to say anything bad about him. I will say, though, that he wasn't ever a person to stand up and defend anything. Just the easiest way is what he's comfortable with. So he didn't involve himself in that.
So how many years? This is in 2018 when you got separated and divorced?
Correct.
And you've got a relationship with some of the kids, but not all the kids, and there's 6 total.
Correct.
How long has it been since you've had a serious conversation with at least one of the ones you don't talk to at all?
My son, he's the next one down. He's 22. He served a Mormon mission. He returned last August, and before he served that mission, he had cut me off. He did go to Hawaii with us. He wanted to do that, so he talked to me for that, and we were attending a private school. We've always homeschooled, and we were involved in this private school.
We're going to take a short break on that note. We'll return to the conversation. We're talking with Haley Straw. She's authored a series of books called Tales of an Amish Taxi Driver. Just do a Google search. You'll find it. This Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
There are more than 700 free podcast episodes of the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show. Episodes are converted to a free podcast after airing on radio. You're bound to find a podcast episode that suits you at letradio.com, letradio.com. That's letradio.com.
Building a business may feel like a big jump, but OnDeck Small Business Loans can help keep you afloat. With lines of credit up to $100,000 and term loans up to $250,000, OnDeck lets you choose the loan that's right for your business. As a top-rated online small business lender, OnDeck's team of loan advisors can help you find the right business loan to fit your needs. Visit OnDeck.com for more information. Depending on certain loan attributes, your business loan may be issued by OnDeck or Celtic Bank. OnDeck does not lend in North Dakota. All loans and amounts subject to lender approval.
Return conversation with Haley Straw on the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show. Haley, well, let's just put it bluntly. She's been alienated from her children for years, and she is author of the book, a series of books, Tales of an Amish Taxi Driver, and she's located in Missouri. I don't know how to say this, Haley. And to be honest with you, this is a really, really difficult conversation. And here's what people told me. We had a lot of hostility in my divorce and separation. We tried really hard to make it work. It was obvious it wasn't. I can only take responsibility for my part. I can't talk about her part in it because it does no good. But one of the things that I had that people told me all the time was no matter what she did with the children, and by the way, she's a great mother, what she did with the children, I was never, ever to put them in the middle of it. I was never to attack her, never to defend myself. I just let them judge by my behavior. And that's the only thing that helped me. And by the way, I called every Wednesday. I wrote the cards, whether they answered the phone or not. Eventually, they started to, and we developed a good relationship. Sounds like that's part of where you're at with some of your children, but not all of them. Starting from point one, can you go through the whole process of what you've experienced? Okay.
I have experienced separation from my children and pain greater than I ever thought. We have a saying in Mormon land, and it was by David McKay, who was the Mormon prophet, I think back in the 50s. And I internalized this. Growing up, it was drilled hardcore into my head, and the saying is, no success compensates for failure in the home. So while raising my children, while home birthing, while homeschooling, while really intentionally raising my children, even to the point where I'm like, okay, I have these children. What character traits do I want them to have? What skills do I want them to have when they leave the home? I created a very structured, not rigidly, but environment, because I had a purpose in raising these children with these values and skills that I wanted to instill in them so that they could be successful adults. Because I took that internally, it was very serious. That was my most important job.
I agree.
So it threw me for a loop when my children counseled me from their lives and when they attacked me, verbally and hated me.
It's hard not to take that personal. I don't know the way not to.
Yeah.
And I got asked this. The question in my mind was, when I was going through the really bad days myself, was, what did I do to deserve this? What happened? It was the most important thing in my life for my children.
Yeah, mine too. And I know what happened with me. Part of it, I believe that when you fixate on something and when you think about something, that thoughts are very powerful, and that the first thing before an action happens is a thought.
Right.
So I had thoughts, because we had struggled. We got married way too young, okay? And we had struggled. I think a lot of our background, being raised Mormon, contributed to a lot of the struggles we had in our life that I'm not going to go into. But our marriage was bad before we moved to Missouri.
Right.
And I promised myself that I would never divorce because my mom left when I was 2. And that trauma is still with me today, and I did not want to hurt my children.
We'll make a mental note of that, because sometimes the childhood traumas can resurface when we least expect it. Look, I get old. I'm not Mormon. I can't speak for that. I'm Irish Catholic. By the way, I always tell people, Hollywood stereotypical police officer, that's me. I'm an Irish Catholic, knuckle-dragging Neanderthal, and I'm totally okay with that. And by the way, I'll be the 85-year-old guy pushing a walker down the hallway. The old folks home, they go, shh, there's 5-0. Because I look like a cop, I act like a cop, and I'm not embarrassed about it. So I don't know what it's like to grow up Mormon, but I do know and understand the concept of commitment, the concept of being a parent, the concept of I'm going to instill in them, and my job is not to be their friend, but is to make sure that they're qualified as adults to live their life. I get all that.
Good. Yeah, but you had talked about how your ex-wife, you saw you communicated with your children on a regular basis, and you're not going to badmouth her. Have you heard of Mel Robbins?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. And her catchphrase, right? Just let them. So I've had to learn that lesson, and it's the hardest thing in the world for me. I'm very much a type A personality. I like to have things in control. I like to know what's going on. Very strong personality, just like you. And that's been the hardest thing for me, is just to let my children be where they're at, to let my ex-husband and his current wife continue their behavior toward drawing my children away from me, and whatever that involves.
You must have in your mind some hopes and thoughts and prayers that someday they will snap out of this and say, I want to reconnect with Mom.
Forgive me for crying, yeah.
It's okay.
I do.
I would cry. Look, I'll be honest with you. Haley, I've been crying all the time. I couldn't do this interview.
I love quotes, and usually I say Amish quotes, but we're not talking Amish today. Bob Marley has said, everyone is going to hurt you. You just have to find the ones worth suffering for. And my children are worth suffering for, so I do suffer. And how I get through that is journaling. Before each of my 6 children were born, I started journals for them, documenting my experience being pregnant with them, my experience bringing them into the world, raising them as children. As babies, if my children want to know anything about their lives, I literally have hundreds of pages of journals. And that is how I communicate with my children, even though they can't hear me right now, is I journal. If I have something I want to share, if I have a hope or a dream, or if I want to write something about how I've screwed up and I'm asking them forgiveness, I journal it.
Sounds a lot like, I call them one-way conversations. My dad passed away like 30 some odd years ago from cancer. And now the conversations are very much one way. I have with him, he can't talk back, obviously. But when I was a kid, I didn't listen. I thought I knew everything, especially as a teenager. And my dad was certainly not a hip, slick, cool kind of guy. But as the older you get, you realize how flawed that line of thinking is. At least it was for me. And here's what I tell people. We're going to go to break in a moment. When I tell people is he died of terminal lung cancer. And the last 2 years of his life, we got to spend time together building a relationship that we wanted, that we enjoyed. So, and I talked to friends, what do? I don't know what to do. My dad's not cool. And by the way, I'm not either. But they're like, do what he wants to do. Brainiac, you're so smart. Figure this out. Just shut up and show up for the ride. That's what I did. We're talking with Haley Straw. She's been alienated from her children for many years. She's in Missouri. She's the author of the series of books, Tales of an Amish Taxi Driver, which we'll talk about a little bit later on. You can find us on Facebook. Look for and like the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show Facebook page. This is Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show. We're talking more about parental alienation, her story, and how she gets through with it, and what she's doing about it today. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
From loneliness to a fulfilling, intimate relationship. Shot at Love, the book, offers insights, life lessons, and a lot of comedy. Get a copy of Shot at Love for all those looking for love and striking out. Written by Carrie Brett, a celebrity photographer and podcaster in Boston. This book will have readers crying, laughing, and learning what to do. Get it at shotatlovebook.com. It's shotatlovebook.com. That's shotatlovebook.com.
Are you turning 65 or stuck with a Medicare plan that just isn't cutting it? We make Medicare decisions and maximum coverage simple. Whether you're enrolling for the first time or looking for a better plan, our experts will help. Call 866-427-1225, 866-427-1225, 866-427-1225, or visit lethealthy.com, lethealthy.com to learn more.
Building a business may feel like a big jump, but OnDeck Small Business Loans can help keep you afloat. With lines of credit up to $100,000 and term loans up to $250,000, OnDeck lets you choose the loan that's right for your business. As a top-rated online small business lender, OnDeck's team of loan advisors can help you find the right business loan to fit your needs. Visit OnDeck.com for more information. Depending on certain loan attributes, your business loan may be issued by OnDeck or Celtic Bank. OnDeck does not lend in North Dakota. All loans and amounts subject to lender approval.
Return to conversation with Haley Straw on the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show. Haley is a really interesting story, and I hate to say this, is one that's not unique. This happens every day across America. We have marriages that turn south for whatever reason. They have children. And by the way, this reason doesn't always mean domestic violence, doesn't mean drug or alcohol addiction or any of that stuff, as was the case with her. There's divorce, and then there's child custody, child visitation. And she's been alienated from at least 2 of her 6 children for many, many years. Let's talk about the 2 that you don't have a relationship, Haley. And when did that start?
With my oldest daughter, who's now 24, that started before the divorce was finalized, and with my son, who's 22, at the same time.
So how many years has that been about?
2018.
Okay, that's been quite a while. And so of the remainder, you have 4 you have some relationship with.
Yes, my youngest, nothing ever changed. She was just 5, and I've had a very solid relationship with her since then.
And by the way, my daughters, and they're in their 30s, and we laugh about a lot of things. They're both in their mid-30s, and I always tell people, man, they are South Buffalo Irish Catholic girls, and they're not the ones you want to mess with. But there were times that were difficulty. We had a lot of difficulty as a parent, and I don't say this in a negative way, as the absentee father who was not there. It was many years before they could come visit. And I'm not here to say negatives about anybody, but when they did, that's when I had to be on my best behavior. And that's the tough part because my emotions get in the way. Is that a fair assessment for you?
It is. This has been a learning experience. It seems like our most difficult trials are also our greatest learning experiences.
You could say that again.
Yeah.
I learn more about myself, and I learn, and not to be religious, I learned the patience of Job. I learned a lot of things from those experiences. And I got to say this, DNA, they were not raised near me, but they're both just like me. And sometimes the things they do that irritate me is same things that I do. Not always, but sometimes. But here, what I was getting at is, even though I was very upset, very, very emotionally upset about a lot of things that are going on, I felt I had to muzzle it and not show my daughters that when they were younger. Do you feel that way sometimes? Yes,
I agree with you. And I'm not a good one at keeping my mouth shut.
Join the club.
Yeah, sounds like it. I've had to learn that. And something maybe we haven't mentioned is that there are many times where I was suicidal and I felt like the whole divorce was my fault. And a lot of that talk was going around. That's what my children believed. That's what my ex-husband believed. And so I was very suicidal for a long time. And once in a while, those feelings will creep back in. And it's been hard for me to dismiss them.
I hear you 100%. As like we said earlier in the conversation, it's awfully hard not to internalize this stuff. And by the way, when my police career started going bad, I got hurt and was retired. And I always say that when things were busy, I knew what to do. I knew my role was. I was very good with all that trauma, all that bloodshed. It's when things got quiet, when I was retired, that the issues came up. And one of the big issues was I became alienated from my spouse and my daughters. And they were the three most important people to me. And I couldn't help but internalize that. Was it fair for them? No. Was it fair for me? Absolutely not. Would you describe it any other way?
No, I agree with you. And I'm very studious and I read a lot and write a lot, as I've said. And I came across this little saying, and it's where there is life, there is hope. Well, I've always been alive and my children have always been alive, right? So there's always hope. And that's what I held on to when I was in those darkest moments, is that thought, where there is life, there is hope.
So we talked about, and by the way, I agree 100%. And going back to what you said earlier, I have a big mouth. And one of the biggest lessons I've learned in life is developing a pause switch where I don't say anything. Because I tend to start with, you did this, you did that, and then I get aggressive. And another thing, and I'm trying to take back my words because it's not helping my cause. And my cause with the children was I want to be the best parent I can, and not to show them the emotional side of me. But that emotional side is part of who I am. Right.
Another person I read a lot is Stephen R. Covey, and he says, begin with the end in mind. And so in every interaction with my children or with my ex-husband, I always want to keep the end in mind, which is happy, healthy, well-adjusted, functioning children who know they're loved and who can change the world. So before I think or speak or act, I try to keep that in mind so that it comes from a place of love and building up. Something tells me you're better at that than I am. Yeah, I don't know about that. The reason I say that is I tend to be more of an aggressive person. As the older I get, I'm learning, and I have been for 30 years, to be more assertive and less aggressive. And I always jokingly say this, but what happens for me, Haley, is I don't say anything until I get angry. Then when I get angry, no one wants to hear it because I'm yelling. If I say it calmly beforehand, before I get angry, then they listen. Then things change. And the problem with the children and not seeing them is, we've said it many times in this conversation, I don't know how, even to say, not to take it personal. So something that I taught my children when they were younger, we had these scriptures we would memorize and these sayings from famous people and poems, these values I wanted my children to internalize. One of the sayings was self-control is strength, right thought is mastery, and calmness is power. So that's been a mantra that we've had in our family for a long time, because I hope that my children and myself internalize it, because life will be a lot smoother, right, if we do. So let me ask you this, and you're right about that. I don't have any of those things that you talked about. I have more of them than I used to, but I'm not where I want to be. And this is something I have to remind myself of all the time. And maybe you're at the same spot I am, Haley. I don't know. Is that, I'm not the person I want to be yet. But I thank God I'm not the guy I used to be. And that guy was not a bad guy. I don't want anyone to walk around and say, man, hey, here's what he had to say. No, I wasn't a bad guy, but I wasn't the guy I wanted to be. And I'm just grateful I'm making progress. Is that a good explanation for you? No, I appreciate you sharing that so much. And as my world has changed and the family dynamics have changed, something that I constantly remind myself when it's easy for me to fall apart or to get into those kind of self-harming, suicidal thoughts is that I okay, here's the mantra. I live my life the way I want my children to live their lives. I am the person that I want my children to become. So I try to keep that focus so that I stay positive, because even though our children may have cut us off or are in a different place in their life, they still look to us. Like you said, you had mentioned something about that. I wish I could remember what it was, but the connection that we have with our children.
We just want, I was, is drilled in me that I want to be an example. And there's an old saying that we live a better sermon with our life than with our lips. And people can take the religious aspect of it all they want, but it's really important how I conduct myself. And before we go to break, here's something that personally, that I'm sure you can relate to, that I can be the best person in the world away from home. But if I don't treat my wife and children the way that I want to be treated, I'm hardly a success. I can't claim success in life or business or anywhere else if I am a you-know-what at home. So that's where it matters the most, and that's where the real work is. And unfortunately, for people like me, that's where the real emotions can be. We're talking with Haley Straw. She's been alienated from children for years, and she is author of a series of books called Tales of an Amish Taxi Driver. Do a Google search, you will find it. This is Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. If you do any business on social media, creating content is one thing. The trick is, how do you turn those people that comment on your social media into consumers? There's a great tool, and you can get more information at letpops.com. That's letpops.com. Best of all, you can get started for free. letpops.com. Check it out today.
From loneliness to a fulfilling, intimate relationship. Shot at Love, the book, offers insights, life lessons, and a lot of comedy. Get a copy of Shot at Love for all those looking for love and striking out. Written by Carrie Brett, a celebrity photographer and podcaster in Boston. This book will have readers crying, laughing, and learning what to do. Get it at shotatlovebook.com. It's shotatlovebook.com. That's shotatlovebook.com.
Pay off medical bills, cover living expenses, or simply enjoy a little more freedom. If you are over 70, you can turn your life insurance policy into cash. Call 866-480-4252, 866-480-4252. Again, that's 866-480-4252, or visit letsavings.com. That's letsavings.com, letsavings.com to see if you qualify.
Return a conversation with Haley Straw on the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show. She's in Missouri. Isn't it a show me state? Missouri. I never know how to say that right. Is it Missouri or Missouri?
I'm not native to here, so I can't speak to that.
It's always been Missouri as long as I know. I could never. So she's also author of the books Tales of an Amish Taxi Driver, which we will talk about in a few moments. Recapping Haley's story very quickly, in 2018, she separated, got divorced from her spouse, has 6 children, and the 2 oldest she's been alienated from. She's got no relationship with them. The 4 younger ones, she has some. So let's start with there. And I know, Haley, for me, I focus on what I don't have more than what I do have. So you've got a relationship with 4 of your children. Is that where you want them to be? Is that those relationships, are you happy with that?
I'm grateful for what I have. There is always room for improvement.
Yeah, that's a very polite, diplomatic way of saying it, which I don't have a lot of, by the way, if you couldn't tell. What I'm getting at is I want to fix the situation. Then that's a key word for me, is fix. I want to fix the situation with the 2 oldest ones, and I'm sorry, but I feel like I'd be fixated on that and what I don't have, and not appreciating the relationship with the other 4. Do you find yourself often fixating on how to fix that?
The first few years I did. As I've matured and as I've studied more and as I've reflected on what I've taught my children about agency, Mormons are very big about agency and allowing people to make their own choices and being there when they're ready for you. So that's the approach that I've taken, as much as it is difficult for me.
Right. And by the way, how old was the oldest when you last had contact?
She was 17.
So you missed out on a lot of things.
I have missed, yes. Last year she got married, and none of my children were supposed to tell me. I found out through another relative who I'm not going to disclose, but yes, a lot has happened since then.
When this wedding was being planned, did you feel like I should be there?
So her stepmom was the mother at the wedding. She was on the announcements, and the hardest thing about this for me, one of the hardest things has been that my ex-husband did remarry, which is great. They're a wonderful match for each other, but that she has taken that role of mothering the children that I want to mother.
And my wife, her name is Stephanie. I call her the boss, and she let them know that she's Stephanie, and if you want to call her stepmom, you can call her stepmom. If you want to call her mom, you can call her mom. That doesn't really matter. She's going to be the same person either way. And they had their own relationship, and I had to let that grow. But when we had the wedding, I'm thinking as a police now. Can you imagine a wedding going on and some spouse not being part of it, not the parent of the children not being part of it, and the police getting involved? That's what I thought of. Man, how did you not react badly? And I would say badly. How did you not react and get involved in that situation? So in order for change to really take effect, true lasting change, which is what I want my children to do, right? I want them to come back to me. There has to be a change of heart, and the only way for a change of heart to happen is for me to be loving and to be behaving well, and for them to come to the realization and to want to change. No amount of forcing is going to change their hearts. It's just going to push them away from me, and I refuse to do that. Man, you're a lot more mature than I am, Haley. I'll be honest with you. I feel like I'm talking to Mahatma Gandhi over here.
You're being way too generous.
We have our, and here's another thing, and I know you like mantras, you like quotes, but one of the things that I tell people all the time, and really I tell myself this all the time, is don't judge me by my worst moments. If you judge me by my bad moments, you're going to have a bad perception of who I am as an individual. And there's some good in the worst of us and some bad in the best of us. So I always carried that in police work, and I carry that through life now. And one of the hardest things I had to learn to do is, and my daughters now, they're adults, they're in their mid-30s, is learn to shut my mouth when I don't agree with them.
I've had to learn that too. In fact, recently my youngest son, he was put into public school by his dad and his stepmom, and that goes against our divorce decree. But like as you said in the beginning, right?
It's a civil
There's
agreement.
really not a lot you can do.
No.
Right, and they were hiding it from me and telling the children to lie, and on and on. Anyway, but I have to step back, and I have to develop a relationship with him and understand him. I can't go in there like a bull in the china cabinet. Right. That's going to damage things even more.
So I want to change gears a little bit. And you said you journal, you write a lot of things, and you've written a series of books called Tales of an Amish Taxi Driver. Are those based off fiction, or is that based off your real life? Are you a taxi driver for the Amish?
I am. I'm taking a break right now to write full time. And yes, they are all true stories about the Amish. Many people have this romanticized view of the Amish. And when I moved out here and I got to know the Amish, I learned that they are human just like the rest of us.
That's the one thing. When we would go in the grocery store and there'd be Amish people there, and we used to always jokingly say, you don't want to be around them in the summertime. But there were some great people and some not so great people. And even then, they had some really good traits and some negative traits, and we always had to keep that balance. Remember we talked about you can't judge me by my worst moment. They'd be giving an accurate presentation of me, and then there's some good in the worst of us and some bad in the best of us.
True, and I think that society focuses on judging the Amish by only their best moments, and they're idealized and put on this pedestal.
And we had a mutual friend on the show a long time ago, Lizzie Hirschberger. She's a former Amish, and she went through her own troubles and tribulations and trauma growing up in that lifestyle. But here's the thing about it, and by the way, just go to letradio.com and look up Lizzie Hirschberger. You'll find it. And she's written some books, but she spent, I think it was 30 years getting some justice. What I take from that, Haley, is that no matter what we're going through today, no matter how bad it may be, there's always A, light at the end of the tunnel, and B, what am I willing to do to change it?
Correct. Yep.
As an Amish taxi driver, and by the way, I have visions of the old movie Taxi Driver. It's not like that, is it?
I don't know what that movie is.
You don't know? You're talking to me? Hey, you're talking to me? You must be talking to me. You don't know all that stuff? It's a long story. It goes back to days of Dog Day Afternoon, all that. So the late 70s. It was an interesting movie. When you categorize your life, Tales of an Amish Taxi Driver, what is the most bizarre thing that most people would not understand from what you do?
The most bizarre. Well, first off, some of them think I'm actually driving a buggy. I don't know how to drive a buggy. And the most bizarre thing, maybe that the Amish travel non-stop. They are always going somewhere, and they're always up to something, and they're always trying to do something. I think that's the most bizarre thing, because people picture them this quiet, idyllic, nothing ever happens. They live in their little communities. They drive their little buggies. That's not true. That's not true.
And by the way, they do use electricity at certain times, especially on job sites. And when I worked at a radio station in Southern Maryland, I did afternoon drive. They liked classic rock. They listened quite a bit. They didn't call me, but they would recognize my voice in the grocery store and say, hey, you're the guy on 97.7 The Rocket, aren't you? I mean, yeah, that's me. Haley, are you where you want to be yet, or are you still a work in progress?
Well, I'm a work in progress.
Just like joining
the club. And I hope we can keep working after we're dead. I don't know. Yeah.
By the way, and what they say is, and I wish I could take credit for this, issues, you got other issues to deal with, but issues are like tissues. Like that certain brand of tissue paper, you pull one out, you deal with it, and there's no one magically right behind it. They pop up left and right, and we all have issues. Haley, how can people find your book, Tales of an Amish Taxi Driver?
It's on Amazon, and I'm on Facebook, Driving the Amish. I'm on TikTok, and I need to get a site up. My husband, he's a software developer, and surely he could make me a site.
Well, as soon as you get a website, even if it's a launching coming soon, send me the URL so I can put it in the show notes. Haley, thanks so much for being a guest on Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show. Very much appreciated.
Yeah, this was fun.
Do you want to be a guest on Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show and podcast? It's really quite simple. And before you get into this notion that I'm not a cop, I wasn't a cop, I don't have something to contribute. Well, the show is about investigating crime. That's one aspect of it from the real life perspective of those who did it. And then it's also about trauma, how trauma impacted them, often crime-based, but not always. Our guests quite often are law enforcement officers, other first responders, military, victims of crime, their spouses, or survivors, talking about how trauma impacted them, what happened, how it affected their lives, and how they rebuilt their lives after. If you want to be a guest, just contact me. It's really simple. Send an email to jay@letradio.com. That's jay@letradio.com. Or go to letradio.com and the Contact Us page, and you can get me right there as well. I'd like to thank our guests for coming on the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show. The Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show is a nationally syndicated weekly radio show broadcast on numerous AM and FM radio stations across the country. We're always adding more affiliate stations. If you enjoyed the podcast version of the show, which is always free, please do me a favor and tell a friend or two or three. I'll be back in just a few days with another episode of the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show and podcast. Until then, this is John J. Wiley. See ya.
Building a business may feel like a big jump, but OnDeck Small Business Loans can help keep you afloat. With lines of credit up to $100,000 and term loans up to $250,000, OnDeck lets you choose the loan that's right for your business. As a top-rated online small business lender, OnDeck's team of loan advisors can help you find the right business loan to fit your needs. Visit OnDeck.com for more information. Depending on certain loan attributes, your business loan may be issued by OnDeck or Celtic Bank. OnDeck does not lend in North Dakota. All loans and amounts subject to lender approval.
With so many options, Why choose Arizona State University?
For me, the only online option was ASU because of the quality. Their faculty was really involved with their students and care about your personal journey. The dedication to my personal development from my professors, that's been extremely valuable to me.
Earn your degree from the nation's most innovative university. Online. That's a degree better. Explore more than 300 undergraduate, graduate, and certificate programs at asuonline.asu.edu.